Hey guys, this is Chung from the Water Box. In this video, I'm going to have some suggestions for you about setting up a low light, low tank planted tank. I'll get you right into it if you're one of those guys who just want to jump into it and just get going. And that's usually one of the ways that I suggest about doing planted tanks and learning stuff is just jump right in, set it up, plant those plants, and figure it out as you go. Let's set up some ground rules. First of all, this is a low light, low tank planted tank that we're setting up here. This is also for tank sizes 40-gallon breeders or below. I specifically picked that because I also want to make this guide as cheap as possible to get into a planted tank. So everything that I mentioned here are affiliate links to Amazon. If not affiliate linked, they're links to websites where I do buy stuff. I'm not sponsored by them. And just like anything else in life, the bigger it is, the more expensive it's gonna cost. So remember that. So if you're gonna go for a 40-gallon breeder, there are actually some exceptions that will make it cost a lot more than, say, you setting up a 10-gallon tank. And the reason why I'm limiting it to 40 gallons or below is because of the height of the tank. Because any height of the tank that's higher requires more light or more powerful lights, and that means more cost to the lights that you're going to buy. And also note that I might say things like future proof, or there's an exception here, or additional suggestions for this type of setup, mainly because even though I want to keep it simple, there might be some extras that you might have to add, especially if you're going to something as big as a 20-gallon breeder tank. First, let's talk about getting a tank. Tank is really easy, and the cheapest and easiest way to get one is wait for $1 a gallon sale at a big box pet store. Okay, that's important because it is really cheap. It's like $1 a gallon. Now, the other option is using like eBay, Craigslist, or Facebook Marketplace to find a tank. Even though that is a good way to find used tanks for very cheap, I would kind of steer away from that, especially if you're a beginner, because these are used tanks. You don't know how long they've been used or how long they've been sitting in the garage or storage before they sold it. All right, in this case, the silicone on the seals might be breaking down and you might have to reseal that tank. And resealing your tank and stuff, it's for a more advanced Aquarius and a do-it-yourself project. You might not want to get that far deep into it. So wait for a $1 gallon sale at a big box pet store and you're good to go. Next thing we're talking about is a cover or a lid for your aquarium. Now, the bigger the aquarium, the more costly the lid will cost. You can get lids at the big box stores. You just have to find the right size for them, and they usually have it in stock. Again, something for like a 40-gallon breeder, we're looking at like 40 bucks, right? Something at the 20-gallon tank or a 10-gallon tank, you're looking about like 10 to 15 bucks. Okay, so it does cost money. You don't need a cover, but it's better if you get one, especially if you're a beginner, because fish do jump out of it. And second, you want to actually create the pressure in a planted tank to promote more diffusion of CO2. And of course, there's going to be oxygen, but also CO2 mostly important because we're doing a planted tank. Of course, you can use like an acrylic sheet or whatever you have on hand as well. But again, that is another option. So let's move on to filter. Filter is something that's going to keep your water clean. It's going to be great for the fish. And obviously, having a planted tank, your plants also help with filtering the water. So that is one of the pluses of having a planted tank. But when it comes to cheap and easy for filtration, I suggest hang on the back filter, and specifically the MARINELAND penguin filters, because these are really cool filters. Now, this is a great hang on the back filter. And if I use a hang on the back filter, it's usually this brand or an Aqua-Clear. And I don't suggest Aqua-Clear because they're a lot more expensive and they don't have the bells and whistles that a MARINELAND penguin does. Because this MARINELAND penguin has a biowheel that produces bacteria that helps filter your water, as well as the charcoal that most people need to use, especially if you're a newbie, and a sponge that helps, filter out the water. So it has everything all fit in there at a really great price. So I suggest getting a MARINELAND penguin filter as your first filter. Now, when it comes to filter, there's a couple exceptions. When you're setting up a 20-gallon long tank, all right, I suggest mounting the hang on the back filter on the side of the tank instead of on the back. That way it helps the water flow across the tank itself. You can also add a small little power head on the other side of where the filter is at to push some of the water back so you have a nice circulation going on in the tank that size. Now, when it comes to a 40 breeder gallon tank, I would suggest getting 2 smaller filters and doubling it up instead of getting 1 filter, right? If you have 1 filter that can filter out a 40-gallon tank, it's not as good as getting 2 20-gallon filters, and putting on both sides of the tank in the back so that you could circulate water. Now, one of the other option for a 40-gallon breeder is to just use one filter that filters a 40-gallon tank, and then using a wave maker or something on the other side of the tank to help circulate that water, but that's an additional cost. Okay, lighting. This is where it's kind of important because lighting drives the growth of plants. Okay, even at low light, low tech tank, you want enough light to grow those low light demanding plants. So let's go over some options. So anything under 10 gallons, I suggest getting these ACT lights. They're pretty cheap. They're like about 20 bucks. They clip on and then they beam down, and then they're a grow light for small little projects, and they work great for a small tank under 10 gallons. Now for tanks greater than 10 gallons, suggest the Night Crew Classic LEDs. These are really affordable and will do the job for a low light, low tech planted tank. Now here's an option for future proofing your tank, but it'll cost a lot more. You get a Phoenix Planet Plus or a Fluval 3.0, and they allow you to adjust the intensity, so you can adjust it to low light to grow those low demanding plants. But later on, if you decide to do a high-tech tank, you have that option as well. You don't have to go buy a new light, but again, it costs a lot more upfront. Now, there's an exception for a 40-gallon breeder tank. If you're getting a 40-gallon breeder and you're getting the Night Crew Classic LEDs or any other lights I suggest doubling up, so you're going to get 2 light fixtures, because the length from the front to the back is so wide that you need more light coverage for the tank itself. Okay, so that's why I suggest doubling it up on a 40-gallon breeder tank. Okay, for substrate, I recommend 2 things that's really, really cheap, a really good option. Okay, first thing is Eco Complete. It is a branded planted substrate. It works well. It's not full of nutrients or anything, but it has a CEC value. But basically what it is, it stores nutrients in the substrate itself that you feed into the water column. It's cheap. It's like 20 bucks per bag, and the bag is like 20 pounds or something like that. And it works well. It works well for me, at least. The other option that's really cheap is using kitty litter. Unscented kitty litter. You get this at Walmart. It's called Special Kitty, and it works well. And us old schoolers used to use this for planted tanks because it's clay. It's made out of clay, and it's kind of basically Eco Complete, but without some of the additional stuff to Eco Complete. Now, one of the other options is actually using soil. It's a cheaper option, but it's a little more advanced, a little more iffy about getting into it, especially for beginners. But if you want that option, it's cheap. And instead of capping it with sand, if you don't want to do that, you could cap it with kitty litter or Eco Complete. For more information on that, you have to check out my soil substrate video when you finish watching this video. CO2. Forget CO2. In this series, we are not using CO2 in any which way or form. You have the option to. If you want to go to cheap route, then you check out my do-it-yourself CO2 video as well, or doing something like passive CO2. Again, I have videos on that, but beyond the scope of this video, forget about CO2. We'll just worry about it naturally happening in the tank itself. Nutrients. Let's talk about nutrients. Again, we're going to compensate with decent nutrients. You're going to have to dose it per the instruction of the nutrient bottle. And I suggest an all-in-one solution. It's easy, it's cheap, and it'll get any complications out of the way. So here are some of the brands that I suggest. Links are in the description below. Let's talk about water. Some people's water might be hard, and having hard water is not really all that great for a planted tank. And for a planted tank, you want something around 7.6, something lower like that. Is a good range of having your water's pH level. So if your water is too hard, you might have to start cutting it with RODI water. Most likely you won't have that much harder water, but people in deserts and stuff like that, they have that. And the only way to fix that is really to go an RODI route by either using a filter or buying it from a store or whatever. So here's some more additional accessories that you need to get to set up your tank. You need a timer for your lights. Get a timer. I don't know how many times I have to tell this to people. That way you don't have to turn it on and off. Worry about it manually. You just set it on a timer, it'll turn itself on, it'll turn itself off. You don't have to be bothered by it. You have to get a test kit. I don't know why people don't buy test kits. You need test kits to test your water, especially when you go online and you ask questions. People will ask you, what are the parameters of your water? Because that is a source of a lot of people's problems. You get a liquid test kit, but the easiest thing to do is just get test strips. These are really easy to use. It's a little more expensive than getting liquid test kit, but Either way, we're looking for easy or looking for more expensive. It's not all that much expensive. Extra filter cartridges or filter media for your filter that you pick. If you do pick the MARINELAND Penguin, you don't have to replace your bio wheel like forever unless something breaks on the bio wheel. But you do need to get the cartridges, the spun cartridges with the charcoal in it. Here's the tip. You don't actually need the charcoal for your filter system. Charcoal is only used if you want to clear up the water because there's something murky in the water or there's something wrong with the water. Otherwise, you don't actually need the charcoal. So here's the tip. Take the cartridge that came with the filter, make a slit in the sponge itself and get rid of all the charcoal. Or you can get rid of the charcoal when it's used up, like say in a month, right? And get rid of it and just use that cartridge without the charcoal and just keep using the sponge, right? And just wash the sponge out every time you do a water change or whatever. That saves a lot of money and you really don't need the charcoal, okay? Unless something's wrong with the clarity of your water. An aquarium heater. If you are in a place where it gets cold, you need an aquarium heater. However, if you are in a controlled environment and you always have a certain room temperature, then you should be okay with it. Or if you're in a warm place and it's always warm, you could do without an aquarium heater. Water conditioners. You need at least some kind of water conditioner to get rid of any chloramines or ammonia or anything that's in your tap water, especially if you use tap water. And this is only if you use tap water, which most likely you're going to use tap water. Okay. So what I suggest here is Seachem's Prime. That's the brand I always use for water conditioning. You use it every time you do water changes or add water into your tank. You want to add some of that conditioner to the water that you're adding to the tank. Simple. Either add it in your tank, the conditioner into your tank, and then fill it up with water or top it off or whatever, or put in the water itself that you're changing and then mix it up and then pour it into your tank. Either way works. Algae scraper. Everyone loves an algae scraper. You can just use a sponge that you get from, like, say, Home Depot or whatever, and just make sure you get stuff that won't scratch up your glass or plastic or acrylic or whatever. Get an algae scraper. You're going to need it. Finally, a water changing hose. Everyone gets a water changing hose for the tank. Okay, you just use a hose, but you have to buy the hose, so you might as well just buy the whole damn contraption. And there's a few on Amazon that you can get depending on the size of your tank. I have some suggestions. Links down below. Okay, after you have everything set up, here are the tips that you need to start doing. You still need to cycle the tank before you put livestock in it. You'll hear it or you might not hear it. If you haven't heard it, you're going to hear it right now. You need to cycle your tank. Cycling your tank takes about 4 to 6 weeks. What that does is it creates the beneficial bacteria in your filtration system so you can start filtering your water for your fish to live. All right? People don't seem to get this, but you need to filter or cycle your filter, okay? So that takes 4 to 6 weeks. Just let your filter run. You have to get some kind of ammonia source into your planted tank, and usually you don't have to worry about it with a planted tank, okay? A planted tank, you'll have plant matter that might decay and cause some ammonia, and that ammonia is going to help seed those beneficial bacteria in your filter. Now, sometimes you might not get that much, all right? So the easiest and cheapest way to do it is feed your invisible fish like you would normally, okay? Just put a pinch of food every single day and let it create ammonia so that can jump the cycle and create the beneficial bacteria in your filter. And for cycling your tank, if you want to try to speed that up so you don't have to wait 4 to 6 weeks, you might be able to just push that back by a week or two, is using a product called Fritz Turbo Start 700. This will give you beneficial bacteria to pour into your tank to really help seed your filter and start that cycle up to produce all that beneficial bacteria in the filter itself. But again, it adds a little extra cost because a bottle of this is like 20 bucks or something like that. Plant heavy. When you first set up your tank, I always suggest to everyone, buy as much plants as you can and plant it heavy. Planting a tank heavily at the start actually gives you a better chance of success, all right? Because you have a lot more plants. It's not that you have a lot more that you have to deal with, but it's a lot more plants that's going to help, one, filter the tank as well as get you more information about how to grow these things. Let's talk about how long you should have your lights on, because everyone asks me that. Okay, when you have your tank set up, you plant your tanks, right? You put water in it and you're good to go. Set your lights to 6 to 8 hours a day. Okay, turn on in the morning, go for 6 to 8 hours and turn it off. I really suggest you start at 6 hours. All right, wait a week or two and see if you get any algae outbreaks. If you do, then leave it at that or lower down the light period to, like, say 5 hours or whatever. And here's the thing, when you first set up and establish a tank, you will get algae. There's no way around there, okay? So just expect algae when you first set it up, say in the 3rd or 4th week. And you gotta watch it and see if it goes away. If it doesn't go away, you gotta lower that light period. And here are some of the videos I've done about starting and planting tanks. So once you have everything set up, come back and check out these videos, okay? I love you guys. Remember, if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button and hit that like button if this video helped you out in any way. I'll see you in the next video.